boyfriend to watch it happen in real time. Then they tell her mother she died from food poisoning. What happened in that luxury villa in Cabo San Lucas will haunt you. The video evidence will disturb you. But what will shock you most is learning that the people who did this to 25-year-old Shanquella Robinson are still 5-year-old Shanquella Robinson are still walking free today, still living their lives, still refusing to tell the truth about what they did to someone who trusted them completely. This isn't just gone wrong. This is a story about the darkest depths of human betrayal, about how people you call family can become your worst enemies, about how the justice system can fail someone so completely that 2 years later, her killers are still unpunished. But most disturbing of all, the evidence suggests this wasn't a fight that got out of hand. The evidence suggests this was something much more sinister, something, something planned, something deliberate, something that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. What really happened during those final hours in paradise? Why did 6 people stand by and watch their friend die? And why are they still free while Shanquella everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you? What really happened during those final hours in paradise? Why did 6 people stand by and watch their friend die? And why are they still free while Shanquella Robinson lies in a grave? By the time you finish watching this investigation, you'll understand why this case has become one of the most controversial and heartbreaking stories of our time. You'll understand why millions of people around the world are demanding justice for Shanquella Robinson. And you'll understand why her story refuses to die, even when the system has failed her at every turn. This is the complete, unfiltered truth about what happened to Shanquella Robinson. And I'm warning you now, once you learn what really happened in that villa, you'll never look at friendship the same way again.
Greetings and salutations. Let's talk about Shanquella Robinson. Shanquella Robinson was a young African American female who died mysteriously in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico on October 29, 2022. It has been 3 years and 8 months. It's going on 4 years, and her family has not received justice and may not receive justice. She was 25 when she died, and she knew how to get to the bag. She was a successful young lady who unfortunately had people around her that were not successful. You know, the old saying goes, the birds of a feather flock together. Now, when it comes to black folks, it's a hodgepodge. And you will have some, you will have a successful black person, and they might have one person, maybe one or two other people that get it like they get it. Everybody else around them is broke as a joke, and that's a fact, bro. And unfortunately, this young lady, most of her friends were broke and relied on her. Most of them goofballs would never leave a house if it wasn't for this young lady. Most of them probably wouldn't know what a nice lunch and good food was if it wasn't for this young lady. Um, so Shanquella was an entrepreneur who operated multiple boutique, beauty, and children's hair braiding businesses in Charlotte. Basically, she did hair. Basically, she was a cosmetologist. And she might not have been a professional cosmetologist in terms of, getting the degree and the certifications, all that whatnot. But regardless, she obviously was good at what she did, or she would not be getting to the bag. And she was getting to the bag, which brought people around her that, they tell black folks all the time, when you get the bag, you have to leave some people behind. Let me tell you something. One of the loneliest people you will ever meet is a successful black person. And that's a fact, bro. And the reason why is because most of us don't get it like that, bro. Most of us do not necessarily have the opportunity to experience that level of success. And so a lot of, the first thing they tell black folks when they get to the bag, you're gonna have to cut some of these people off. You're gonna have to cut some of these people off. You're gonna be constantly paying for people's lunch. You're gonna be constantly, some people can't stand being lonely. And look, I don't not I do not profess, first off, RIP to the young lady. Um, you know, our hearts go out to the family. Um, but some people can't deal with loneliness. Some people, man, they want to kick it with somebody, bro. And even if, like, if I'm getting to the bag, my friend getting to the bag, sometimes getting to the bag is time consuming. I might have three or four friends that's getting to the bag, but we can barely link up and do some lunch. Like, people, humans have a need to coagulate, if you will. Humans have a need to be around each other. They have a need for friendship and companionship that comes in different forms. And a lot of times, when you black and you're experiencing success, you're probably going to have people around you that do not like you. And that's a fact, bro. That's a statement of fact in our community and our culture. And when it comes to acting a fool, black folks go from evil to medieval. And what happened to this young lady was medieval. And from the research I've done on the story, it appears as if they set this girl up. You got to give it to them. To this point, it's, we're going on 4 years and nobody's been prosecuted. And the U.S. federal government says they're not going to prosecute. The Mexican government says they can't wait to prosecute, but the U.S. federal government won't extradite. But the funny part about that is, if the U.S. government looks to Mexico and says they want somebody extradited from Mexico back to the U.S., it's happening lickety split, bro. So, we can get into that a little bit later, but um, it appears as if her so called friends set her up. And, this is speculation because obviously they are being prosecuted. So why am I prosecuting them? But I just know how black folks are. I just know how black folks are, bro. And it appears as if her friends, so called friends, set her up, had her pay for this Cabo trip. The ones that couldn't afford it, that really should have stayed their butt at home. They went on this trip. They got these tickets. They flew the flight. They got the accommodations. They got the room and board. They got nice. I researched it. It was upscale accommodations. They ate good. They got back to the room and then they beat her tail, bro. And from what I see, and this is speculation, but from what I see, there was more than one of them that jumped on her. And she's not a big girl. She's a petite little girl. And the girl beating on her is more than twice her size. And at one point, they was trying to say it was some transsexuals involved, but we've not been able to substantiate, nor have we been able to corroborate that. So we got to let that one be. But regardless, it might as well have been a man beating on her. She doesn't even look like she can defend herself, and she was butt naked. They waited until they all got their bellies full, and then they took to commence to beating her in the way in which they beat her. Now, me personally, if I don't want your money, I'm not going anywhere with you because I don't want to see you. I don't like you. I don't want to hear your voice speaking. That's the type of individual I am. I'd rather stay at home in bed, which obviously that's what her friends was doing, was at home in bed, but she was up getting to the bag. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to rely on her to. Because let me tell you something. It's some black folks that would never leave a city, would never leave their county, would never leave a hood if it wasn't for the fact that they got a friend that's getting to the bag. And it just is what it is, bro. And again, our hearts go out to the family. Um, so the family has levied a $100 million civil suit against what they call the Cabo Six, and um, one of the Cabo Six tried to change her name. I want to say his name really, because I just think there's other things going on that they're not telling us. That I think the civil suit, and I think the federal government is not prosecuting, is because the civil suit. I think they want to wait for the civil suit to see what comes out of the civil suit and see if they can prosecute off some evidence off the civil suit. Because if you look at their actions, like for me, this girl was white and she went on a trip with a bunch of black girls and caught a beating and ended up on the road to glory, if you will. To me, it's a different story. All of them's getting prosecuted. They're going to get prosecuted in the U.S. and they're going to get extradited to Mexico to go sit in a nasty Mexican cell somewhere. But that's not the case. Like, white folks pick and choose when they want to lock black folks up. And you got a successful black female, and it's okay for her to die in this way. And it's almost like the entire world, it's almost like the only people that care about this young lady is her family and the country of Mexico. That's what it's like, bro. So one of them, and it's funny, black folks is just, um, it's just funny how a lot of us just don't understand the law. One of the Cabo Six tried to change her name. Normally, I don't do a lot of name dropping, but it's public information, bro. It's public information. Dejanay Jackson legally changed her name to Imani Green. She should have changed her name to White Woman. Maybe she can get out of this. I'm just tripping off of the fact that it's going on 4 years and nothing. There's not been any trial at all. So no trial date has been set for the Shanquella Robinson civil lawsuit, the case which was filed in October 2024. You know, that's 2 years after she died. I'm telling you, it's so much. I had to do a video. So much going on with this, bro. Why is it 2 years after the fact? And I'm sure the family has, some answers, but I'm like, it just don't seem like nobody's in this girl's corner. And the ones that are in her corner lack the know-how to get things moving with any type of sense of urgency. The case was filed October 2024 and is currently proceeding through preliminary hearings in Mecklenburg County, Charlotte, North Carolina. Jurisdiction disputes. Several defendants have attempted to either dismiss themselves from the case or have the lawsuit moved to Mexico. You don't want that. Man, I tell you, just so much craziness in this case. You don't want that because Mexico can't wait to see you. Because I promise you, if any of them girls go back to Mexico, they're not coming back out. They're not coming back out. And push come to shove, Mexico being a tourist destination, push come to shove, they probably could care less who's guilty or not guilty. They just mad because they had a dead body on their hands. And tourists come there and do foul crap all the time, bro. Tourists go to Mexico and do craziness all the time, bro. And they tired of it and fed up with it, and they want to, because they had to clean this up. They want to see people suffer in a Mexican jail over it, which is part of the reason why the federal government won't extradite. A court hearing is scheduled for July 22nd, 2026. Well, we'll hold our breath, I guess. That's a whole nother, uh, almost a month and a half from now. That's over a month and a half from now. A court hearing is scheduled for July 22nd, 2026 to address a motion filed by the defense to stay the case. But anyway, so the one girl thinks that if she changed her name, that somehow she's absolved from, being involved in this. And so Mexican authorities are alleging they did not have the opportunity to detain the people involved. They didn't have the opportunity to detain the Cabo Six because they left mysteriously. They left a day early. So they left a day ahead of their planned departure. So, that in and of itself is suspicious. There was a delayed autopsy. Then they conducted the autopsy. They said she had bruises, she had injuries consistent with a beating, she had her neck was broken. She was a little girl, so it wouldn't have took that much. And them girls beating on her was huge. It wouldn't have took much effort to create those types of injuries. And they dip out early. Told her family that she died from alcohol poisoning, and they dipped out early. Mexico, and this whole situation is a hot mess because Mexico embalmed the body. They had to get the body back to the U.S. so that the U.S. could conduct their own investigation, but they embalmed the body. Now, what I'm trying to, and there's rules and regulations. You get put on that Delta flight, they're supposed to embalm you. But I'm just trying to figure out how come, man, it's just a mess because it affects organs. They're unable to tell how much alcohol she would have had in her system. It affects tissue, which is another way for them to figure out what alcohol or any other drugs would have been in her system. But they can still tell, they can still look at bone structure, bone fragments, bone anomalies to be able to see, hey, she's got a broken neck. How this happened? Could this possibly have happened from her falling, possibly drinking too much and falling over? You know, but the U.S. government is alleging that because the body was embalmed before it was sent to the U.S., it significantly hampered their autopsy efforts. So, as far as they're concerned, case closed. They're unable to really determine cause of death. And I'm like, it just don't seem like this young lady. It seemed like the people that are in her corner have a level of incompetence and ineptitude to the point where they can't help her. And then it seemed like everybody else is against her. So Shanquella Robinson reportedly paid for the entire trip to Mexico in October 2022, covering the expenses for herself and six acquaintances. The 25-year-old Charlotte woman traveled with these individuals to a villa in San Jose del Cabo. This is an exclusive villa. These fools wouldn't even get out of bed, bro. They wouldn't be able to afford to get out of bed if it wasn't for her. And this is how you felt about it. Like black. One thing about black folks is we love that which we hate, and they know they can't stand that girl, so they can't wait to get right up underneath her, have her pay for their accommodations, flight, rooms, all that. Have them pay for all their accommodations, eat real good, then get her back in the room and beat her brains out. That's black folks for you, bro. It's amazing. It's amazing. Now and see, our grandma would always keep us away from certain people, from a lot of people in the hood. And my grandma, rest her soul, she's been dead for a little while now, but when we were young, we couldn't figure out why. Man, why she won't let me kick it? Even our family members are, there were certain family members and cousins she would not let in the house and would not let us hang with them. I would have to go around the corner and go up the block to kick it with some of my cousins because my grandma would not allow us to kick it with a lot of different people in the hood, bro. And she just knew that now that I'm older now and can see things, a little bit older, a little bit wiser, can see things a little bit differently now. Stories like this is the reason why black folks is crazy. I love y'all, but y'all crazy. Y'all crazy. So, Shanquella Robinson's body was found in the living room of a rented vacation villa in San Jose del Cabo near Cabo San Lucas, Mexico on October 29, 2022. The villa was located in the Fundadores, an exclusive gated community. Exclusive. In other words, most of y'all don't even bother getting out of bed because you can't afford it and you shouldn't be there. And this is the reason why most of you goofies need to stay in the house. This is the reason why our grandma wouldn't let us hang with really none of y'all. This is the reason why, bro. It's so much hate in our community. It's unreal. Like I always say, nobody is harder on black folks than black folks. Like all this craziness about the KKK, skinheads, conservative Republicans, right wing politicians, skinhead police. You know that they ain't nothing standing next to some broke, jealous black folks, and that's a fact, bro. So basically, someone it's like no one, like with all this wisdom and all this technical know-how and all these investigators involved in this case, no one said, "Hey, either don't embalm that body before you send it, or at least let us send a group of investigators down there to conduct our own autopsy so we can see what's going on." Nobody did any of that. They embalmed that body, put it right on the plane, bro. Put it right on a Delta flight. Embalming significantly compromises an autopsy by washing out evidence, altering tissues, and destroying crucial forensic data. Because preservative chemicals replace bodily fluids, pathologists strongly recommend conducting any private autopsy before embalming occurs. And see, that's what really, because see, I know her family had some money. At a minimum, a private autopsy should have been conducted before her body was put on that Delta flight. Embalming fluid flushes out, dilutes, and chemically alters drugs, alcohol, and poisons in the blood, making standard testing highly unreliable or impossible. But it does make possible now a defense for these goofies that she paid for to go on this trip to a place they shouldn't even be in. That girl should have been there by herself because she really probably was the only one that could afford it. Obviously, she paid for the whole trip. Sort of conflicting stories. The other story I got was that I guess it was one or two of them that was able to pay for their own accommodations, but she had to pay for the rest. She paid for most of the trip. She paid for most of the trip, if not all of it. She paid for most of the tickets, if not all of them. She paid for most of the accommodations, if not all of them. She paid for most of the rooms, if not all of them. She paid for most of the food, if not all of it. And they was eating good in the neighborhood. But regardless, this embalming now gives these girls a defense, so-called girls. We got to get to the civil trial to figure out which one of them was dressing like a girl and wasn't really a girl. But um, the embalming now gives them a defense to say she was drunk. She was drunk as a skunk. She was high off of pills. She shot up a bunch of stuff, and then she took her neck and slammed it up against the edge of a table. We said we good. We go into our rooms to read Gone with the Wind. Preservatives, embalming preservatives are designed to kill bacteria and viruses, essentially sterilizing the body and wiping out the specific organisms that may have caused a fatal infection. So they're not going to know what killed her. They're not going to know what killed her. The injection of fluid can wash out subtle internal bleeding, and the dyes sometimes added to embalming fluid can change tissue color and skew visual observations. So the bruises that would have been on her, all of these things are going to make a civil suit more difficult than it needs to be. You're trying to get justice for this young lady and her family. Now, what can still be determined is the fact that while embalming complicates the procedure and limits some lab work, an experienced forensic pathologist can still uncover a great deal. Major anatomical causes of death, such as massive heart attacks, ruptured aneurysms, tumors, cancers, and major physical trauma, or broken bones, are still very clearly visible. So they can still see that the girl had her neck snapped, but they just can't figure out how. They're unable to utilize alcoholic or drug toxicity levels to either corroborate, substantiate, either for or against her hurting herself in that way. Them girls are saying it was alcohol poisoning, but how she get a broken neck? Like, alcohol poisoning doesn't necessarily cause her neck to get broke. Now, you can be drunk as a skunk and you could slip on something, but she was found in the living room. So, Shanquella Robinson's body was embalmed in Mexico in October 2022 to comply with the mandatory health and legal requirements necessary to transport her remains across international borders back to the United States. Again, somebody, the federal government is capable of great feats, and you would think that somebody would say, "Hold up a second. We either need to send a team down there to conduct an autopsy, or y'all need to do not embalm this individual, put her on a private jet, and send her to us so that we can conduct a U.S. autopsy on the body and try to figure out what happened to her." But a lot, to me, I said it before, I say it again. It's like this young lady, a successful, highly successful entrepreneur, and she can pay for you brokies to hop on a flight so all y'all can get on your YouTube page like you paid for it all on your own, which is what we love to do. It's as if somebody is saying, "Well, screw her anyway. Who she thinks she is? She's this successful black entrepreneur. She 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 must have brought these things on herself. Whatever happened to her happened to her. I'm not looking into it." It's as if the only people that care about her lack the competency to do anything about it. From the Mexican government to, and I have to say, I feel like the family made some errors in judgment. Somebody should have had somebody down there to do their own autopsy. There's just errors in judgment. And here comes my pit bull. But so Shanquella Robinson's body was embalmed in Mexico in October 2022 to comply with the mandatory health and legal requirements necessary to transport her remains across international borders back to the U.S. In Mexico, the law requires that human remains be embalmed before they can be released by local authorities and legally transported internationally by a funeral home. This process ensures the body is properly preserved for the journey back to the U.S. and meets strict health and safety standards for air travel. While the embalming was a standard logistical procedure for her repatriation, like I didn't know that you needed to repatriate a dead body, it heavily impacted the subsequent legal investigations. But see, people knew that before they sent her back home. People knew that before they sent her back home. Yet here we are, bro. Because the embalming process alters the body and preserves tissues, it made performing a subsequent highly detailed autopsy in the U.S. incredibly difficult. The U.S. autopsy performed by the Mecklenburg County Medical Examiner resulted in different findings from the initial Mexican examination, leading to discrepancies between the two autopsy reports. Attorneys and the family's legal team, like how your family got a legal team, but they're not sending somebody down there to do an autopsy. All they got to be is board certified. That's all they got to be is board certified, and send them down there to get an autopsy. Attorneys and the family's legal team publicly criticized U.S. authorities, arguing that federal investigators waited too long to conduct their own examination, waiting until after the body had. And you know what? That's y'all's fault. Get somebody down there. Get somebody down there. Waiting until after the body had already been embalmed and transported. This delay was cited as a reason U.S. authorities struggled to gather the concrete physical evidence needed to pursue federal charges. It's not like the family doesn't have money. You got money, get somebody on it. Because if it's one thing I can't stand, I've been in similar situations. I've had friends in similar situations. One thing I can't stand is you have black people with money, and for every one black person with money, they got 5 to 10 to 15 people that can't stand them, but they always around them. Another issue that I'm having is everybody and their mom has seen the video evidence. It's been uploaded, it's been looked at, it's been uploaded probably over a million times. It's been looked at by millions of people. And the video evidence isn't enough for some sort of foul play, which is why they're going to a civil suit. But it's just weird how white folks pick and choose when they want to get up out of bed in the morning and prosecute somebody. Like, get out of here, bro. What really bothers me is that we don't have enough successful people in the black community, and the ones that we do have, we don't support them the right way. If you can't stand a person, stay from around them. But we steady running to people. We hate their guts, but we want their money. Like, we just foul as one collectively. We just foul, bro. And we need to take the few of us that are successful, and we need to be pushing them to the top. We that girl needed people around her to support her and help her any way they could. And instead of her having a staff of people supporting her, she got a group of so-called pretend to be wannabes, and really they hate her guts and can't wait to go to Cabo with her. Like, how that work, bro? I don't mind saying it, bro. Let me tell you something. People accuse me of being negative all the time. And if you stand in front of me, I'll punch you dead in your grill. Because we as black folks, we don't look at ourselves in the mirror as to what we are, so that we can get out from underneath all this psychosis that we under, and all this brainwashing that we deal with, and how we don't support each other, and we especially don't support the those of us that's getting to the bag and that's successful. Like, if you obviously can't stand the girl, so stay from around her. And those of y'all that love her need to be supporting her. Not only did she not get no support, but she got these people around her that hate her freaking guts. And obviously, look, I'm not gonna say and pretend like obviously she may not have been the most likable person, but stay from around her. Now, nice people finish last out here. Stay from around her. If you can't support her, stay from around her. So, the U.S. autopsy conducted after the victim's body was already embalmed and returned to America yielded an undetermined cause of death and could not confirm the spinal cord injuries initially reported in the Mexican autopsy. Which I guess, I guess what they're saying is a spinal cord is not a bone, so which made it an undetermined. Federal prosecutors must have clear proof to secure a conviction in court. This video, alone, while deeply disturbing, was not deemed enough on its own to legally establish the exact cause of death or federal jurisdiction in a U.S. courtroom, which to me is conflicting because a broken neck remains highly visible during an autopsy, even after a body has been embalmed. So it's just conflicting to me. They just, somebody is making the decision federally on the US side. Somebody is making the decision federally on the US side to simply not prosecute. And look, don't get me wrong. A federal prosecution is expensive. It's expensive. All those federal investigators, all those um, federal forensic experts, all the federal prosecutors are all getting six digits, bro. So you're probably talking 2 or 3 million just in job titles, and you're probably talking 7 to 9 people just to get the case to trial. So it's costly, bro. It's costly. But just to me, people need to pay a price, bro. And look, man, maybe the girl, because why are y'all fighting her and she's butt naked? Get out of here, bro. But you got to look at it with an equal set of lenses, and you got to see both sides of it. Look, maybe the girl, regardless of the fight, maybe she got drunk as a skunk. Maybe she slipped. Somebody else could have come in there and did and popped her neck like that. But maybe she got drunk. Maybe she slipped on a banana peel and popped her neck up against a table or whatever. Maybe that did happen. But it just seems like all of this circumstantial evidence why them girls leave early. Them little broke hoochie mamas, you know, you'd have thought they'd have never left. You know, like sending you on a vacation like that, that's love. She's showing love for people that's not showing love for her. I'm not gonna front. I've been sent on vacations. I've sent people on vacations, but I've been sent on vacations. You feel love sitting in a big ass room overlooking a beach. That's love, bro. And she showed them love. They're not showing her no love. They beating on her for one thing, and then they can't wait to get up out of there a day early. Get out of here, bro. Major structural damage, such as a fractured vertebrae or a severed spinal column, is impossible for the embalming process to erase or hide. Forensic pathologists conduct these types of post embalming examinations regularly when questions of foul play arise after an initial burial or release. There you have it, bro. Like somebody is making a decision. Somebody is looking at this young lady and saying, "She's an entrepreneur, black female entrepreneur. Screw her. She didn't have to go to law school. She didn't have to go to all these schools and get all these certifications. She didn't have to pass the bar. She didn't have to do none of that, bro." So she did. Um, she attended West Charlotte High School, where she was a cheerleader and active in campus life. She went on to attend Winston-Salem State University, which is a historically black institution located in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. She still don't have to pass the bar. She still don't have to get a PhD so she can do forensics. You know, she got it up out the mud on her own. She got it up out the mud on her own. Somebody looked at her and said she was actually a graduate from Winston-Salem State. Kudos to her posthumously. But somebody is looking at this girl and saying, screw her. She thinks she all that. She didn't have to work as hard as I did. I ain't prosecuting nothing. And one person, I guarantee you, is one person that's saying that. And now her family has to rely on a civil suit for the truth to come out. They're going to have to drag them girls into court. That's $100 million lawsuit. They're going to have to drag them girls into court and get them to telling on each other, which black folks love to do. Put just a little bit of pressure on one of them and the other one to tell on the rest of them. And it's going to be the Cabo snitching six. Facts. So what federal prosecutors are saying is that they didn't decline the case because the video evidence was inadmissible. They declined federal prosecution because the evidence collected, including the video, that's not making no sense. They didn't decline the case because the video was inadmissible. They declined the federal prosecution because the evidence collected, including the video, was legally insufficient. So if you're not declining the case because the video was inadmissible, how is the video legally insufficient? Like they playing games, bro. They're playing games. I don't know, man. If these girls, these girls, I don't know, man. It just does not look like these girls are innocent to me. If they are, on some planet somewhere, if they are not guilty, then You know, so be it, I guess. But I don't know. Somebody's gonna have to fight for her. She can't fight for herself. Therefore, I know her family's trying to. So when the Department of Justice and the FBI investigated the death of Shanquella Robinson in Mexico, they reviewed the autopsy results and investigative materials. Ultimately, they determined that the available evidence did not support pursuing charges in a U.S. court. So, you know, because the tragic incident occurred in Mexico, U.S. government does not have direct jurisdiction over the crime. Yeah, but when they want somebody extradited from Mexico, it's a wrap, bro. They on the first thing smoking. To prosecute federally, the Justice Department must prove a specific federal crime was committed, which requires a standard of evidence U.S. authorities could not meet in this case. The autopsy performed in the U.S. did not match the initial findings reported by Mexican authorities. So, Mexican authorities investigated the incident as a femicide. See, and that's what makes people think that there were some transsexuals involved, and that's probably why the girl was because whoever was beating on her. And if you listen to the voices in the video, some of them voices deeper than mine. And Mexican authorities are saying the reason why she was killed was because she was a woman and she was fighting people who were men in dresses ultimately and sadly. So Mexico is saying it was a femicide, bro. See, the people in Mexico know something we don't, but they probably should have held on to the body, bro. They sent the body back expecting the US to be compliant, and it's 4 years after the fact. It's almost 4 years after the fact, and her family still not gotten justice. So at this time, there's currently no criminal trial scheduled. No one has been criminally charged or extradited within the U.S. I'm not gonna lie to you. They basically pulled off. It's either the perfect crime or the imperfect crime. I mean, they're still facing a civil suit, but who knows how that's gonna. Civil suits are a lot easier to prove than a criminal case. But I mean, to me, if you do that to somebody and it's 4 years after the fact and you've not seen the inside of a jail cell, I mean, I don't know, man. Y'all tell me what y'all think. I appreciate y'all watching the video. It is suggested and you are strongly encouraged. Please like, share, subscribe. Please hype the video for me. I appreciate y'all. Justice for Shanquella. Justice for her family. May she rest in peace. And black folks, we got to do better. We got to do better. Even if these people are innocent, they still beat on her. We got to do better. We need to take those that are in our community that are successful and we need to push them. We need to support them. We need to staff them. We need to push them further up the chain. And if you hate them, stay from around them. Because when people like this, when this sort of thing happens to people like this, she's now no longer in our community to be a beacon of hope for the young people. A young person can look at her and say, I can be successful too.